Here we see a pretty good setup. 40 degrees to 30 degrees is the optimum range. That's right where he is. Looks real good. In another color, let's go ahead and draw in the shaft plane and the shoulder plane. We'll draw the shaft plane in here in red. Let's undo that. That wasn't very good. That goes right up the shaft line. And then in white, we'll draw in the shoulder plane. Now let's watch and see what he does on his swing. We want to keep the right elbow on the club plane. I see he's getting it up a little high. See, the club is a little high there. That's what you call an underswing. At this point now, ideally, we'd have the palms both facing each other and vertical. You can see that the right palm is down and the left palm is kind of up. That's what they call an overswing. An underswing. The left hand is under the club. So what that's going to require is that he hover over the ball at impact. So his chest is really going to try to cover that ball at impact, because inevitably he's going to bring the club down on what's called the shoulder plane. See that? Instead of on the club plane, he's coming way over the top of that. He's dead on the shoulder plane. The club now is parallel to the lead arm instead of the trail arm. And what he's going to have a tendency to do is kind of pull up out of this shot there. See how he's pulling up out of the shot? Watch the right foot even slip a little bit. His head has moved way up out of the shot. That's because that's a very awkward position to get any kind of leverage. Now he manages to get through the shot pretty good, makes good contact, even with that right foot slipping and the head pulling up. So what we'd like him to do is to take the club back a little more on this line and then route it to the halfway point, which would be this line here, which is the torso plane. So if you take the club back higher and then drop it in lower on the swing plane, he'd be in better shape. Here we see a golfer struggling to get into a good setup position. His shoulders are very rounded, his head is down. It's going to be hard or nearly impossible for him to get his lead shoulder tucked in under his chin on his backswing. The other thing we'll notice is that his hands are pretty far out from his shoulders. What we'd like to see is about 144 degree angle from the club shaft to the shoulder. 151. What we'd really rather see is down here about 10 degrees less than that. So his hands should be quite a bit lower than they are right there. So we'll work a little on that. Let's watch the takeaway. Right hand's a little bit under the golf club here. You can see that at this position here where the thumb is on the trail edge. Probably had been a slicer at one point, was working to crawl it. Here we see a dragonfly coming slowly across the screen. That's pretty good quality camera work there. Now we see the club coming in. This is what we call an underswing. How the right elbow is coming up as the left arm goes down. He's swinging under the club, lifting it, leaving it shut. That requires the hands to be pretty far away from the body at this point here. Notice that he's overflexed the right elbow. It's been in really too tight against his chest. His left heel has come all the way up to ground. His right leg is straightened up. We want to keep the heel on the ground and the right leg flexed so that he can drive back down to the golf ball on plane, and his chest should be directly over the ball at impact. He's in a good position there. Let's see what happens. Still good. Moving into the shot. Opens a little bit, but not bad. So he's doing what he needs to do to compensate for the incorrect setup, with the exception of rotating the right knee to the left knee here. Notice how it kind of stops moving a little bit, and he gets stuck. All in all, not bad. It's a style of swing called an underswing, where as you go back, instead of your palms turning vertical to the ground, the right palm goes facing the ground, and the left palm comes up, forcing the elbow, to come up. See how he is right there? How he's coming back, the elbow's coming up. Here's our golfer standing on the right side of the ball. One of the things he's been working on very diligently is to try to get his lead arm or right arm above his trail arm at setup, and he's still not quite there, but he's much closer than he used to be. Notice at this angle we can clearly see that the right toe is a little out in front, so if his shoulders were parallel to his toe line, then his shoulder would be out in front too. And he gets it out in front much earlier than he did just even a week ago, where he was probably back maybe twice this far before you can see his lead arm. So he's in a pretty good position earlier than he was before. Starting a nice turn. Uh, this is what we call more of a neutral swing. Notice how the elbows are staying about the same level. He's a little bit under with his lead hand, not as much as some of the other videos we've seen today. So it's a more neutral swing. Bringing it up on the plane. Notice right at this point now, the club shaft is getting parallel to the trail arm, and the face of the club is still parallel to the lead arm. That's pretty good. It's going to come down. I'd like to see a little bit more rolling of the front knee, the lead knee towards the left knee, and less air between the legs at this point, but not bad. And the club is a little bit above plane here. I'd like to see it more on plane. And by that I mean we'd like to see this to be a straight line where the club is down at that level instead of up so much. He would do that by bringing that elbow back closer to his side. That's one of the keys to the neutral swing, is to keep the elbow kind of tucked in closer to your side than he has it here. So he's going to start back now. He's going to try to route that club under that yellow line. And notice he doesn't do that because look where the elbows are. They're separated. He's broken his triangle down. And now his swing path has to be this way. From here, it's got to come that way, which has to be an over-the-top swing. So let's see what he does there. Yep, he's going to go straight down the over-the-top line, right on it. I mean, it's perfectly on it. But if we look back at setup, you'll notice that isn't where his plane should have been, because at setup, his plane was here, folks. So that's the over-the-top line, and that's created by setting the club on the wrong line at the very top of the swing. He does good there. It goes above the line, gets way up above vertical, and he's going to pull right down the shaft. Hard to get that club back on plane. Wide open, comes on through it, scoops it a little bit, and manages good hand-eye coordination to get decent contact. So we're going to work on laying that club a little more back on that top line at the top of his backswing. Here we see a pretty good setup. 40 degrees to 30 degrees is the optimum range. That's right where he is. Looks real good. In another color, let's go ahead and draw in the shaft plane and the shoulder plane. We'll draw the shaft plane in here in red. Let's undo that. That wasn't very good. That goes right up the shaft line. And then in white, we'll draw in the shoulder plane. Now let's watch and see what he does on his swing. We want to keep the right elbow on the club plane. I see he's getting it up a little high. See, the club is a little high there. That's what you call an underswing. At this point now, ideally, we'd have the palms both facing each other and vertical. You can see that the right palm is down and the left palm is kind of up. That's what they call an overswing. An underswing. The left hand is under the club. So what that's going to require is that he hover over the ball at impact. So his chest is really going to try to cover that ball at impact, because inevitably he's going to bring the club down on what's called the shoulder plane. See that? Instead of on the club plane, he's coming way over the top of that. He's dead on the shoulder plane. The club now is parallel to the lead arm instead of the trail arm. And what he's going to have a tendency to do is kind of pull up out of this shot there. See how he's pulling up out of the shot? Watch the right foot even slip a little bit. His head has moved way up out of the shot. That's because that's a very awkward position to get any kind of leverage. Now he manages to get through the shot pretty good, makes good contact, even with that right foot slipping and the head pulling up. So what we'd like him to do is to take the club back a little more on this line and then route it to the halfway point, which would be this line here, which is the torso plane. So if you take the club back higher and then drop it in lower on the swing plane, he'd be in better shape. Here we see a pretty good setup. Spine's at about 40 degrees. It's a little over 40, but that's not too bad. What I don't like is the rounding of the shoulders. So if we get rid of that, that would be better. Let's go ahead and draw in 3 different swing planes. One plane is set up by the club. That's called the shaft plane. Then there's another plane that's set up called the torso, which is right through the middle of the torso. And the third plane is the shoulder plane. So let's do that one in. Let's do that one in yellow. We got the shoulder plane going up here. Now what we want to do is we want to keep the arms and hands inside those 3 planes, and the club above the red plane on the way back, probably on the white plane be best, and then on or below the red plane on the way forward. So let's watch what happens on our takeaway. Got a good setup there. See the takeaway. See, he's swinging what's called a torso swing plane. See that? He's going right up his mid-torso right there. He's dead on plane. Good position there to the top. Now, what he doesn't do here is get any wrist hinge. Notice the club is still straight up. It should be more of an L angle or parallel to the ground at this point. He'd be a little bit better off. But he does have the club nicely on plane, just slightly above it. The red elbow's pretty high. I mean, the right elbow's pretty high above the red line. So he's lost a little bit of control, but he's in a pretty good place right there. Now let's continue on down to the downswing. See how he reroutes the head of the club down to below the red line. See that? It's coming down to the red line. In order to do that, what he has to do is get that trail arm parallel to the shaft of the club. See that position right there? That's one of the things we all want to strive for, is getting that shaft parallel to the trail arm. The bad news here is the club face is not parallel to the forearm, the lead forearm, because his left wrist is cupped instead of flat. That leaves the club open, so he'll have a tendency once in a while to flare the ball out to the right. So let's watch as he comes into his impact position. Nicely impacted. He could use a little bit more hip rotation. We can't even see the right butt pocket, let alone both butt pockets on this. On through. He still hasn't rotated his lower body as much as his upper body. On through to the shot to a pretty nice finish. I think if we can get him to engage his legs a little bit more and flatten out his left wrist, he's going to have a much better golf swing with much better results. What we want to see the golfer do here is, as he rotates onto his back foot, to get his spine tilted to about this 15-degree angle of this yellow line. So he's getting a little bit behind it, not bad, but what's happening is his hips aren't staying back where they were. So how his hips have moved off that yellow line. The butt has to stay behind him. Now he gets great width and great torque there, but we really need him to get to stay back on that yellow line so that he's got a 15-degree angle on his spine, and right now it's straight up and down. Now we're going to move slowly into the shot. See, the hips are unwinding first. That's good. Good club lag right there. He's moving down into the impact position. Move real slow here. Now at this point here, we'd like to see his body have shifted a little bit more towards the target. He's getting plenty of club lag, but what you see is the club is starting to unload early. You can see the shaft is bent forward. That means that he's decelerating the club instead of accelerating the club. And he's doing that because he stopped moving the left hand. And so he's going to start to flip the club real quickly there, and the hips aren't leading the swing right in through here. It's all lower arms right on through, and he never gets forward till there. So we got a couple of things to work on. We'll do them in slow motion until he can get this figured out. What we'd like to see happen here is on the takeaway for his head and spine to be moved over to the 14-degree line. So 14 or 15 degrees. He doesn't quite get there. Actually, it does. What happens again is the lower body moves away from the upper where it should have been. He's got a little bit of an angle, but not as much as we'd like. We'd like to see the butt out behind him a little further. This will work, though. So let's see what happens. Now, notice how good his hip action is going into the shot. He does really good there. And he's coming in. He's lost too much club lag right here. At this point now, the club should still be up in the air at about that angle right there. He should just move that angle that he's got set up right there down to the impact zone. And he doesn't get there. See how it's already losing it? Then by the time he gets just a little bit further forward, it's hard to move it that slow. He's lost it completely, and the arms separate. We got a pretty good position here, but what we'd like to see is the club at this point be parallel with his lead arm and his trail leg. He's really got a good position here. The club right now should be right on that line. And notice that it's quite a ways ahead of that. If it was on that line, he would be in a great position to power through the ball. So he's really close. He's just a little too much right hands through the shot, which is preventing him from getting a good long extension down the line and through the shot. See that? Boy, that's within inches, though, of being in a really good position. We've changed this golfer from a two-plane swing to a single-plane swing or a single-axis swing. What we'd like to see his hands is a little higher. What he's going to do is emulate a little bit of Mo Norman. He's going to play the club in the center of his stance, the ball forward. You can see the ball quite a bit forward of the golf club. And this is going to create an inside-out approach to the golf ball. Clearly, if he swung across that golf ball to the inside, he'd miss it completely. So let's watch the takeaway. He's just going to have to fold and unfold his trail arm there. And that's what he does. You can see right there, the arm is folded straight down. His lead elbow is pointing back at the golf ball. And he's just going to drop the club into the slot, swing right on through it, hit it right down the middle. Now he can move the ball a little closer to him at setup if he wants. But really, this is going to be a pretty good setup for him, and I think it's going to work. He has limited rotational movement during the backswing. Okay, we've drawn two lines in here, one where the head is and one where the butt is. We'd like to see both of those stay connected to their various objects here. So let's watch what happens in the takeaway. Head raises a little bit, not too bad, and the butt pulls away from the white line. We need to keep the butt. Butt's really important to keep that back against that white line. The club now is kind of above the shoulder plane, which would be, again, that line there. Let's see if he drops it down on that line on the way to the ball. So he comes over the top of that shoulder plane, and the head actually lifts up instead of going down. We'd like to see the head go down a little bit. We definitely don't want to see the butt come away from the white line here. So there's a couple of things we've got to work on. We've got to keep our angle set. Turns through it nice and gets a good finish. Great hand-eye coordination, but if we can just stay a little bit more stable, he's going to be better off.